Great. So the webinar is now recording. Thank you to the 20 viewers we have in the room with us right now, and thank you to everybody who is watching this on our portal. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenter today. We are very excited to be joined by Ginger Walker of P16 Plus. Ginger has been with P16 Plus since 2014. She manages several contracts for data services, including a growing partnership with a network of out-of-school time agencies. The network partnership is part of a diverse funding stream that has helped P16 grow its data team and district data sharing agreements while supporting the impact of San Antonio's out-of-school time sector. This is obviously what our topic is going to be about today. We are super excited to have Ginger here, and I will go ahead and turn it over to her now.
Hi, can everybody hear me? Oh, I guess I should see in the chat if anyone can hear me. Yeah, thank you for responding. With that, I'll get started. I'm really excited to be here and share a little bit about what we've learned along the way. We're entering the third year of our data services contract with a network of out-of-school time providers in San Antonio. And, you know, from when we started to now, I feel like there's a lot that we've learned that I hope can help others think about earned income through data services. So to get us started, I'd like to ask everybody to think about your own partnership and some of the data resources and infrastructure that you've built for your own partnership that might be of value to an outside organization or partner who's looking to partner for data. So I think Michael has a poll that he'll put up, and I'd love to see from those on the call which of these resources your data partnership has. Do you have data sharing relationships with local school districts? Do you have a data team with expertise in education data, infrastructure for secure data storage, perhaps a data support council, experts who review your data practices and policies? Or continuous quality improvement facilitation skills. Maybe your partnership participated in a Strive Together Impact and Improvement Network or results-based accountability coaching, where they learned some great continuous quality improvement facilitation skills. So with that, I'll pause and let you guys answer the poll.
Just waiting for a few last few people to answer the poll question. We'll leave it open for about 10 more seconds, and then we will go ahead and end polling. And so those are the shared poll results that you all should be seeing on your screen right now. Those are how the respondents have answered.
Oh man, everybody has data sharing relationships with local school districts, 100%. The other thing most people have is a data team experienced in education data and continuous quality improvement facilitation skills. That's excellent. So today is about rethinking about that data infrastructure in terms of services that you could provide to generate earned income in a really strategic way that helps you grow the data capacity, staff capacity of your own partnership. At the same time, meeting a need that could help you reach your mission, cradle to career. So let me share a little bit more about what I'm going to talk about today. So I'll start with sharing more about the partnership that we're involved in, the benefits that we've seen from that partnership with a network of out-of-school time agencies, and some challenges that we've had along the way, and resources that we hope will help you. And we'll finish with some questions and answer and discussion around opportunities and potential pitfalls to be aware of around earned data partnerships. So a little bit about the partnership. So the client, so to speak, is a network of over 30 out-of-school time agencies in San Antonio. And they are, you know, organizations like the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, but also much smaller organizations like community centers or even church-based programs that may not otherwise have access to the kind of capacity that our partnerships have to share data with school districts and get a sense of their students' outcomes in terms of academics, attendance, and behavior. So our main deliverable as part of this contract is an education success scorecard, and a big component of that is agency data coaching. So each agency gets their education success scorecard, but they also get one-on-one time to reflect on how they can turn that data into action that improves outcomes for their students. So the partnership has certainly grown since we started. From 2 districts agreed to participate in this data sharing for this purpose when we first started out, and now 4 districts are participating, including the largest in the county. So now we're covering about 55% of the students served in the entire county. And we've gone from 6 participating out-of-school time agencies to now 30 who will be receiving their education success scorecards and data coaching. And of course, the value of our contract has increased, but you'll notice not as much as the size and scope of the partnership. So we've really been able to realize some economies of scale along the way. And you see the data here as an example of the type of information that the network gets on the students that are served by its agencies. So what we're seeing here is that the percent here is the percent of students who are considered college ready on track for their grade level. They're scoring high enough on their state tests in math and reading to be considered college ready on track for that grade level. And in the network of out-of-school time agencies, 34% are considered college ready in math, 41% in reading, and both they're much higher than the school districts that those students come from. And in reading, they've caught up to the county level, which is significant because the students served by the network, 87% are economically disadvantaged. And in the county, it's 62%. So the fact that they're able to catch up with their peers with a much lower rate of economic disadvantage has been some really compelling data for the network to be able to tell its story. So we've certainly both seen value from this partnership. The network, of course, is able to use this data to tell their story, to communicate to funders, to district partners, using shared measures, and really that's been validated by this third-party partner, P16, to be able to have the same shared measures across agencies. And then it also allows them to actually set goals and track progress toward those goals because they're getting this education success scorecard every year. And they're also able to do some continuous quality improvement of their programming because at the agency level, they're able to see what their students' individual program level needs are. Are they struggling in math? Are they struggling in reading? Are they having low attendance or high discipline issues? And do some program level continuous improvement around that data. But at P16, we've really been able to see a lot of benefits and where this partnership has been strategic for us. The contract allowed us to turn a half-time data analyst position into a full-time position and sustain that. And then we went into this partnership knowing that long-term we had a vision for expanding the number of districts that we had data sharing partnerships with. And so did the network of out-of-school time agencies. So we've expanded the number of participating districts in the scorecard, but we've also expanded the number of districts that P16 has data sharing agreements with in general. And part of that is because the network was supported in using in building relationships with the district. Now the largest district in the county with over 100,000 students is a new data sharing agreement that we've been able to get partly because of the support of the network in building relationships with the district and encouraging them to share data with P16 for this purpose. But I think the bottom line, and if we, the filter that we use and for the work that we take on and the common ground of our contract is that it's strategic for us to support the work of the Out of School Time Network in order to accelerate our community's progress to proof point. So the agencies we know are a key lever in improving outcomes cradle to career. And with 30, there are 40 agencies in the network, 30 of which are participating in the scorecard. That's the kind of scale that we need to be able to move outcomes at a Bexar County level. And so if we can grow the impact of San Antonio's out of school time sector, we can accelerate our progress to meeting our mission as well. So, did I skip the, yeah. So I'll share a few examples of the benefits that we've been seeing along the way. And so these are specific agencies that we had one-on-one coaching with who shared how they're using this data to change how they provide services to students. And I took the agency names out, but I still think these are compelling. One agency, saw that their students had a relative needs in math that were even greater than their reading. And so they had a regularly scheduled homework help time, but they decided to add math tutors, specialized math tutors during that time, knowing that their students needed extra help in math. Another example of how this data can be used, we had a conversation with an agency that really reflected hard on this data because they had a mission of providing access to economically disadvantaged students. And they were seeing that not as many students in their program were economically disadvantaged as the students in the districts that they were in. So they set a goal of increasing access for economically disadvantaged students, specifically by building partnerships with campuses within the district that had higher economic disadvantage rates. So they really use this data to spur action that would provide access to their programming for more economically disadvantaged students. And another agency, when they saw that their students were having real issues around chronic absenteeism, opted to add attendance to their parent conversations that they were having every year, having discussions about chronic absenteeism and the importance of regular school attendance. So, I wanted to share one specific example with the name of the agency because this is such a positive example. When we sat down with the YMCA and looked at their education scorecard, they participated 2 years in a row. So we sat down with this data which shows the percent of students, fifth graders, who were passing their state test in 2015 versus 2016. And if you're in a state like ours, you know that the passing standards can change every year. But what we're looking at with this for context is whether the students were, the passing rate was higher or lower than the districts that they're from, the ISDs, which is the gray bar, and then the network of participating out of school time agencies as a whole, which is the orange bar, and the county, which is the yellow bar. So in 2015, the fifth graders, they're about what it was in the district, a little bit lower than their peers in the network of out-of-school time providers, lower than the county, but that county economic disadvantage rate is pretty low. But when we sat down and saw their 2016 data compared to 2015, something had really changed. Their their students were more likely to have passed their state math tests than the district, the network, and even the county. And so we asked, well, what changed between 2015 and 2016? And they said, well, that aligns with when we started a new summer program, Power Scholars Intensive Academic Summer Programming. But unfortunately, at the time they were looking at this data, didn't have funding to continue that program. So they certainly used this data to change that. They were able to share it with funders and get funding to not only sustain, but actually expand the Power Scholars campuses for the next year. And this is a representative from YMCA who spoke on a recent panel for us about how critical the data was in being able to scale a program that is working. So I wanted to I'll pause there. Michael, I know this was an unscheduled pause, but I think I skipped the earlier one. Any questions?
Yeah, totally fine. So we'll give folks, we'll say 30 seconds, just knowing at the speed at which some people type. If you have any questions right now, please feel free to enter them into the chat box or the Q&A box, but we'll just give folks a few seconds to do that. So we have one right now, Ginger from Daniel, who asks, are you thinking about offering program evaluation / effectiveness as a data feature?
So, we are thinking about it. Right now, we've focused on kind of building the infrastructure to provide a scorecard of data to these agencies, building some common measures, common language around the outcomes that the network wants to see. But yeah, that's certainly something that we're as far as maybe even university partnerships to provide a more evaluation, direct impact study. We're definitely thinking about that in the future. And then I see a question about are we getting student level data from the school districts or just aggregated? And it's very important that we are getting the student level data from the districts, not aggregated. And that is why we're able to add agencies, up to 30 agencies, and just create, slice the data for the students that are in each agency and provide a customized report to each one. So the agencies share with us a roster of student IDs of the students that are in their programs, and then we take the student level data and create a report for each one. Growth models, that's a great question, and I skipped it because I feel like it was kind of telling the same story as the slide before. But we do have a measure of growth that we added to the scorecard for the first time this year. And this is our state measure for growth. And it's whether they did not met or exceeded their individual progress target for each student. And so in math, 27% of the YMCA students, for example, exceeded their individual performance target, their progress target. So if they scored at a high level last year, they'd have to score even higher this year to get in that exceeded category. And so you can see that 27%, and even the networks, 25%, is much higher than the participating districts that were 15%. And unfortunately, it's not uncommon for students to not meet their progress target or even slide backwards. So we have fewer students in YMCA and the network who are doing that as well. So I hope I didn't skip some questions up here. Let's see. Growth models, and then how do you get the student data? What is that process like? So it's different for every district, and so that's why, as I'll talk about in a minute, the number of districts involved is a big cost driver. But for most districts, we ask them for kind of a Excel spreadsheet of the data, and there's about 30 fields that we request by student ID. Their transfer procedures are different at every district, but we work out with them what they're comfortable with. And then we combine the data here on our end. And then the data that we get from individual agencies, that we've had to keep very, very simple. We give them a template of 4 columns. We ask for the student's student ID, which if they can't give us anything else, we ask for the student ID. And even the agencies have really changed their intake procedures to be able to get us that student ID, because it's so important for them to participate in this education success scorecard and get the data back. Sometimes they'll ask the students for their lunch ID if the student doesn't know their student ID, and it's often the same thing. So we'll ask them for their student ID, the district that they're in, and the first name and last name. We're also asking them for how often they attended the program, days offered versus days attended. And for agencies that are able to give us that data, we're able to give them more information back and say, these are your results for students who attended your program frequently and infrequently. And we also look at tenure, how long the student has been in the after-school program.
So Ginger, Daniel looks like he had a follow-up on his question from earlier about program evaluation and effectiveness, and asked, do you think that that might be for an additional fee if you decide to do that?
Yes, and we'll get into pretty soon here how we think about what we charge for our data services, and it's all time driven. So we think about how much time each person on staff is spending on it, and then calculate what that hourly rate is, make sure we're including overhead, and that's how we charge. And then how do you get the student data? We just did that.
So then the next one would be, was the work of the YMCA one of their own existing programs or something that was created through the partnership? And that was asked from Paul.
It was an existing program. I mean, we did not know, like I said, when we sat down with this data, we asked, well, what happened between 2015 and 16? And they told us that they had, started a new Power Scholars program. And that's really what this data helps uncover, is kind of what's working at the agency level. They're really the ones that are providing the direct services to students. And so when we have a common scorecard like this and a process to reflect on that, we can kind of lift up bright spots and things that are working that can be shared across the agencies. But really that's where the action is, when the agencies are using this data to inform the programs that they're offering on their own. What's the fee? Is it based on the number of students and the program serves? It actually isn't. That's not a big cost driver for us, but I'll talk about very shortly what the cost drivers are. The programs get parent permission for you to get the data. They do not, because they're only gathering summary level data. Agencies do not receive any student level data. They only receive aggregate reports of groups of students that are 5 or more, so nothing that could be potentially personally identifiable. And the other thing is this, the data that P16 gets falls under the studies FERPA exception. Share, and yes, we're willing to share the MOUs, data agreements, parent consent forms. The MOUs I'll share here in a moment. We have prepared some redacted documents that you guys can use. What type of database are you using to input data from the school districts? This year, we're putting the student level data behind a Tableau viz for the first time, but really we have been using Excel for all of this. We haven't needed anything fancy. Are you working with agencies in the preschool age range? No, preschool, there aren't any indicators on our report besides maybe attendance that would cover grades that low, and I think that is kind of an area that we're hoping to grow in. And do you get the data from starting at first grade or what age? The agencies can send us students from any age all the way through high school. If it's data that the district has, then we will include them. You see student subgroups. Oh, yes. So ELL is not one of the subgroups yet, but we did start, we created a Tableau where you can filter the network level results now by any ethnicity, gender, or economic disadvantage level. So we have started disaggregating. So with that, I'll hold questions till the next break because I think I might cover some of these. Thanks for all the great questions. So I'll start with sharing a little bit of the challenges that we've come across along the way and resources. Several of y'all had questions about how to calculate costs. And so this is a tool that I put together to think about kind of what we should charge for the services that we provide. So our main cost driver is it's pretty simple for us, it's staff time. And so I took a look at the different activities that I plan to do for the contract throughout the year. And I really got down to the number of hours I thought I would spend on each one. And this is, you know, a tool for me internally. We don't share this level of detail on the contractor statement of work. It's really the categories to the left are kind of the summary level of detail that we provide on what's being covered with the staff time. And the hours and frequency let me think about, well, if next year we have 5 districts or next year we have 50 agencies, that's kind of a simple adjustment. We can start estimating what would be the cost as things go up. And we make sure to include in that hourly rate overhead like computers, human resources, and rent. So we add about 15% to the hourly rate to think about staff time inclusive of the overhead that's required. And this helps think about what the major cost drivers are. And somebody asked, is it based on the number of students? It's not. An agency with a few number of students and an agency with a large number of students generally doesn't make that big of a difference in the amount of time we're spending on it. Some of the biggest costs for the data director, my time, is the MOU negotiation if we're adding a new district, and then the one-on-one agency data coaching. So every time we add an agency, we schedule 2 meetings with them throughout the year. And I really think that's been a critical element of the contract, comparing from before when we didn't do it and now when we do, but it is a major time driver. And then the data analyst time, the biggest drivers for her time are report design and report formatting. And so this also helps to think about what are your agency's fixed costs and variable costs. And I kind of mentioned before, we've increased the size of the contract, but found some economies of scale along the way. So when we're adding agencies within the same district, that's our district MOU negotiation is kind of a fixed cost. We do it once, but we could have 5 or 50 agencies whose students attend the same district. And so that's kind of our fixed cost, and we're able to add more and more agencies for the same price. The agency data coaching, on the other hand, every time we add an agency, we have to think about how we're going to work in reflection time with them throughout the year to think about how to turn their data into actionable insights. And then the data analyst, the fixed cost, has to do with designing the report on the front end. But once that's designed, it really only has to be done once. Formatting, on the other hand, actually customizing the report for each agency, that is driven by the number of agencies. So this is something that we've been able to realize some economies of scale along the way. And in fact, you know, after we'd set up this MOU arrangement with the districts, it was very easy to go in and add another partner, even one that was not part of the network of out-of-school time agencies, at a much lower cost, because the district had already approved of the template agreements that we were using, and we were able to go in and add actually the housing authority at a much lower rate because all of this infrastructure was in place. So I'll pause there for any questions about estimating costs, because I know that was a big topic of interest. Oh, the percent, it's the percent of my total hours. Someone asked what's the percent column. So this was for our first year, I believe, but I estimated I was going to use 24% of my time on this. So that kind of helps calculate cost. Yes, these slides will be available. I think Michael's going to post them to the portal, and we'll also share a link to some downloadable resources.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll do a few more seconds, but then move on. Okay, so we're all in collective impact, and we know how important communication is. But here's some things we've kind of learned along the way about keeping everybody on the same page. I think it's even more important in an earned income kind of client service provider relationship, because we've got to keep the trust going that both sides are pulling their weight and following through on their commitments. So here are a few things we do throughout the year to make sure everybody's still communicating and on the same page. Annually, we sit down with the district and make sure that they've seen the report that we're creating for these agencies and have a chance to ask questions, really understand it, provide feedback and suggestions about how we can improve it. And that's kind of tied to also a conversation about extending the MOU for another year to be able to continue doing this work. And then monthly, we provide an activity report and invoice to the network of out-of-school time agencies. And that has been really vital when there have been maybe delays in when they thought they would get certain deliverables, for them to see all of the work that we're doing, that we're not just sitting on our hands, that we're pushing and trying to move things forward in every way that we can. And then monthly participation in network meetings. And if you are thinking about earned income partnership, I really encourage you to think of ways, and if there's any opportunity, to be involved in the kind of clients' partnership and decision-making processes. We're involved in 2 of the committees of the network of out-of-school time agencies, and that's been a really vital way to make sure that not just the person managing the contract, but a whole network understands the value of the data that's being provided, has the opportunity to ask questions, and can
and we also help facilitate using that data in those discussions. And so I think it's a key part of the partner seeing you as a partner and not just a contractor. Because really what we want at the end of the day is not just to deliver a shiny report, but to move outcomes for students. And getting involved in the committee structure of your partner can be a good way to, you know, be not just their partner, but their thought partner, not just their contractor. So 2 data coaching meetings per agency. That's been a really key way to make sure that that agencies understand the data that they're receiving and have time to reflect on how to use that. I'll tell you, we didn't always have those agency data coaching meetings. And when we didn't, it was at the very beginning, and we were kind of in the phases of setting up the systems and structures for the network to be able to access this data for the very first time, but not really having put as much emphasis on how they're going to turn that data into action. And so, you know, the report got to their email inbox, but it wasn't, we weren't really sure if much happened with it after that. We're sending it to very busy program directors, and so that's why the agency data coaching meetings have been so vital. Not only do we get to reserve some time to really reflect on the data with these agencies, but also we learn a ton from them. Like, we would never have known about that YMCA bright spot, or that agencies were using this data to change the way that they provide services to students if we didn't sit down with them and get their feedback and learn from them about how this data is being used. And it's certainly informed changes to the scorecard along the way. For example, we know that the agencies really want a lot more data around discipline, because even if they don't see themselves as impacting certain academic outcomes, discipline is something that they're working with their students on. And so being able to see more detailed data around discipline. And then we also, the picture to the left of the slide is us presenting some of the data at their network summits. So plugging into those summits and other places where we can help the network tell their story using data. And so I'm going to pause because I see a question I didn't address before, but do you see any greater willingness to contract with your services by agencies and districts when the data results are positive? What are some of the marketing sales points that the agencies and districts see as the greatest benefit? So I think that is a dynamic. They joined on with us not knowing whether their results were going to be positive or negative, and I think they were a little bit nervous about that. But from the very beginning, it was made clear that your agency report will only be shared with your agency. The network report combines many different agencies together, and so there wasn't a way publicly to see, well, this agency is doing better than that one. The agency was the only one that received their own report, and it was really used to inform the agency. And then when we sit down with the district, we use the network level report, and all the data comes from the district. So at the end of the day, they can see any agency report they want, but our philosophy is always kind of using data in a positive way to shine a flashlight on what's working. And so in our conversations with the district, we certainly do highlight those positive bright spots. And we're not pulling out data for an agency whose students are struggling, because that's really the agency's information to help them improve. And I certainly have seen agencies take that information to heart in those one-on-one data coaching sessions. They're not sweeping it under the rug, the negative results. They really I've really been struck by how urgent they feel about changing negative outcomes, especially when they're able to see it on paper for the first time, that their students are having discipline issues, or their students aren't attending school regularly, and they're committed to doing something about that. Some of the marketing sales points that agencies and districts see as the greatest benefit, I think that's a good question. I think it's different for agencies and districts. The districts, they're compelled by the idea that they could share data once with P16, which is a trusted partner that they've worked with for years. Their superintendent is on our board, and that could potentially replace 30 different agency data requests. They're only sharing it with once with us, and then we break it out for each agency for them. So they're really compelled by kind of the economies of scale there, at least at the kind of director of research level. Superintendent level, they're compelled by the idea that they get a barrage of different out-of-school time agencies trying to communicate what their impact is. And so they find it compelling that agencies are using a common language and some rigor around talking about what their impact is, and they have some data that is kind of a common measure. So I would say those are the district sales points. And then the agencies, it has not been any great lift right now, especially because the agencies individually are not paying for the service right now. The network is, and so they are funded by the local area foundation, and so the agencies get this benefit as being part of the network. And as you can see, from going 6 to 30 agencies, we've really maxed out actually the number of agencies that are in the district even serving students that could participate. So it doesn't take much. They're hungry for the data. Do you provide continued coaching around continuous improvement as well to the agencies, or is the data coaching more focused on how to collect and organize their data? It is about continuous improvement. We start with just debriefing and understanding what's on their report. We kind of talk about what surprised them, what has changed year to year that might be behind changes in the data. So just one, understanding the report, but we use some of the tools because we had just come out of an impact and improvement network, 2 impact and improvement networks actually with Strive, and got some great training on tools like the A3 planning tool that Toyota and others use to kind of think about the plan, do, study, act cycle in terms of their broader vision for the organization. And so we actually use that tool in the data coaching sessions and ask agencies to think about how they measure their progress toward their overall vision, and how do they check progress on that throughout the year, and how are their activities aligned with that overall vision. And that's where the data is used to kind of inform that discussion. So we certainly plug the data into continuous improvement coaching. So I will switch to kind of the second to last slide, but we are, these are some of the resources that we've provided, redacted versions of our statement of work that we used for the Partnership with Out-of-School Time Network, a timeline, which has been critical for keeping everybody on the same page. And this is an interesting version of the timeline. It's our most recent one. And you can see on the timeline, it helps set expectations for what will be done by when. And so the network knows not to get worried about MOUs until after the month of May. So we know we'll be working on that all the way through May, and then they can start worrying about it if we're really off track. So they take a long time. And then this one has a kind of contingency plan for if the district at the end of the day, we can't get that MOU across the finish line by the end of May, what do we do with the time that the network has paid for of P16 staff time? And this has kind of 2 alternatives. If all three districts get their MOUs done by then, we do this. And if only 2 of them do, we diverted staff time to some other analysis that they wanted, but they wouldn't have been able to afford with the 3 districts that they wanted. So kind of an interesting way to break it down. And I think an important way to do things for us going forward, knowing that at the end of the day, it is the district's decision whether or not to share data, and so that's kind of a big risk point. The data standards and definitions, that keeps everybody on the same page of what do we mean by attendance. We mean 10% of school days excused or unexcused, and so this is the really detailed version of what are we measuring and how are we defining it. And then the district-facing one-pager. And this actually might ask the question about kind of key selling points to the district. I find that, you know, and I'm sure many of you find this in your work, if there's turnover at the district or, you know, you have a great conversation with one person and they say, yeah, we'll sign this, and they send it to their boss, and there's a huge misunderstanding that none of it gets communicated. And so, like, for example, we had, we went really far with one district and then started getting pushback, and because they thought that we wanted to share student level data with each agency. And so that was something that we had covered in our individual meetings and discussions with the district representatives up to that point, but totally got lost in translation. And so when we include this district-facing one-pager with every communication we send to the district up until that MOU is signed especially, that helps prevent miscommunication. So it's important early on to prioritize action. And I think I've kind of referred to this before, but you know, when we first were setting up these systems with our partner to be able to provide data for the very first time to agencies, we'd really, and I think mistakenly thought of the report as kind of the end deliverable. But once we saw that, you know, we had put all this work into making data available to the network, but we hadn't really thought through yet how to make sure and support the process of turning that data into action that improves outcomes for students. And at the end of the day, that is the reason this partnership is mission aligned for us, is that student outcomes would improve. And so, you know, once we had gotten the system set up, I would say, and you can do this even earlier, build in ways to turn that data into action, and don't, I think with our new partnerships, we've really foregrounded that. We're going to provide you this report, but we're also going to provide debriefs and data coaching and continuous improvement support along the way, because, you know, our shared goal is that this data be used and actually make a difference. So we certainly use what we've learned through the impact and improvement networks to help facilitate that. So here I'll share a few of the opportunities and potential pitfalls just to close out our discussion. And if you guys want to start typing in any questions in the chat box, or I'd love to hear from you questions you have about these, and I'll share some examples of each. And then I'd love to hear from you other opportunities or potential pitfalls that you think of when you think of earned income data partnerships, because this is clear, this is obviously not exhaustive. But I think some of the opportunities, as you know, we really saw it as a way to advance our mission when we were partnering with a group of agencies at that scale and being able to improve their impact. And then it certainly lined up with sustainably covering the costs of some areas we wanted to grow in. We wanted to grow our data team. We turned that half-time staff member into a full-time staff member. We grew our number of data sharing contracts with districts. And then economies of scale, we've certainly, we think about what it takes to move the needle at scale at Bexar County, we have to be thinking about ways to maximize scarce resources, and where P16 is building capacity in the areas of education data, there are outside organizations that can benefit from that, that might not have the capacity to build their own internal data resources like that. And at the end of the day, I think it also does a lot to demonstrate the value of the P16 partnership, that we're providing something that's so important to the out-of-school time sector that they would actually pay for it. And so I think that kind of keeps an interesting check and balance on the partnership, that if we're providing something that doesn't get used or isn't useful, that partnership would go away. And so I think it is a really good way to demonstrate the value of what we're providing and keep us accountable to making sure that it's valuable. And then potential pitfalls. I think it can, we must use our mission as a filter, as cradle to career partnerships, and it can be tempting to engage in a partnership just to kind of deliver a report as the end product, but really we have to think about our shared vision in terms of the improved outcomes for students. And then, and if that shared vision is not there, it's not there. But I think in the case of our partnership with the Out-of-School Time Network, it certainly is. And then the organization, I think when there's a paid contract involved, it's tempting to fall into the role of a traditional kind of contractor, service provider slash client service provider relationship. But really, you know, the P16 and other partnerships want to be a partner in that shared goal. And then it can be sometimes more difficult to influence how the data is used to improve outcomes. So because it's not directly being provided to our councils and networks, we're not the ones facilitating the dissemination of the data at all times. It can be more difficult, and you have to kind of think through that. Is the person that, or the agency that you're partnering with, going to make sure that that data is used to improve outcomes? Are they going to hire you to facilitate part of that process? But it certainly needs to be thought through together on the front end of what are the next steps after you receive the report, and how is it used to improve outcomes. And since it's outside of your agency or with another partner, it can be more difficult to influence that. And then the kind of risk factor behind putting together cost estimates on a yearly basis is you might not know yet whether the district will in the end agree to share data for that purpose. And I think as much as you can do on the front end to you know, let the district know that you're thinking about this kind of partnership, and that, you know, and can get that district buy-in. For example, before we went to the 2 new partner districts this year, the network organized a superintendent breakfast and invited the superintendents from the 4 districts that they wanted to partner with, 2 existing partners and 2 potential new partners, and really use the time to get their feedback and input on how they wanted to partner with the out-of-school time sector. And that was also tied to an ask to share data. And so, you know, even at that breakfast, one of the new partners, superintendent at that breakfast, said, yes, we'll share data for this. Now, of course, you know that it takes many more steps between that and getting it over the finish line at the end, but that district ultimately did share data. So getting the district buy-in at the beginning. So with that, I wanted to take some questions if we have a minute or 2. I think we only have 2. And anything you wanted to add to opportunities or potential pitfalls. So I see how often frequency do you get the data for each agency, and what's the time frame between the data request and aggregate report back to the agency? Right now, we're doing it once a year. We tried it twice a year, but because STAR scores were the state test scores were available once a year, it was kind of a thin report at mid-year. But it would be great to kind of next steps, find more rapid cycle data that we could share with the network. We're just not there yet. And the turnaround time, the agencies get us their list of students who are included in their program around mid-June. And it's been taking until about September to make sure that we get the district data from all 4 districts, format the reports, and we've kind of redesigned things this summer. So I think it possibly could be a shorter turnaround period, but we can give it to them earlier if we get it, but it's due back by September. And then it's the only network we provide this service for. So we also provide data services to other, we have the San Antonio Housing Authority that we're about to start working with. And then we were working with the Diplomas Network kind of before they became part of P16. We were contracted to be the data service provider for a collective impact group focused on Latino post-secondary student success outcomes. Where are you keeping the data? What system are you using? We are just using Microsoft, we're storage in Microsoft OneDrive cloud storage with 2-factor authentication, and we've really just been using Excel up until this point, and now are putting a lot of the student level data behind Tableau. We have our analyst as part of the Strive Tableau Fellowship and has been really advancing our skills in that area. Do you produce individualized reports for each OST? Yes. What does your one-on-one training with OSTs look like? We use tools like the A3 continuous improvement tool, and kind of ask some reflection questions. That's something I'll add to the resources folder, kind of a agency coaching one-on-one agenda. Do these data sharing agreements have to be approved by school boards? None of them did because they didn't involve any money changing hands. I mean, that could be different district by district, but so far none of our 4 have. Where are you keeping? Oh, I think I got that one again. Anything else? I know we're 1 minute over time.
I do not see any other ones on my end, Ginger. But if we see any come in, I'm seeing a lot of thank yous, which I would absolutely echo. And actually, we do, if you do just have a moment, Ginger, we do have one from Christine. Do districts ever feel they should be paid to provide their data? And that's one question.
So far, no. In fact, they're pretty happy. They haven't been paid by anyone else to provide their data, and they're pretty happy that we're, you know, offering to take some of that off their plate by submitting 1 data request on behalf of 30 agencies.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, you're getting a lot of thank yous in the chat box, and I would absolutely echo that. For those who are still on the webinar with us, I am copying into the chat box a link to a survey that we would ask you to please fill out, not only to gather future topics for webinars, but also to see if there are any topics that you might be interested in presenting, similar to the great work that Ginger has presented with us today around various topics that your partnership is working on. There is also a question in here to capture potentially more information or link up with Ginger afterwards, and so that is in the survey link. I will be posting this recording onto the portal, as well as all of those documents that Ginger has referenced and the Google Drive link. I can actually post that in the chat box right now as well for anybody who's interested to actually pull in real time into the Google folder that Ginger has created. And so thank you to everybody who's joined us. Thank you so much, Ginger. We are so appreciative of having you take the time out of your day to present for us. And thank you to everybody who is watching this later on the portal.
Really happy to share.
Great. Thank you all.